Hello and welcome to the Wellness Brief podcast. I am your host, Sarah Nolan. I am a women's fitness, fat loss and nutrition coach. And today I am joined by Rachel Philpotts, who is a specialist in burnout. She is the founder of Renew Clinic, which is a functional medicine clinic specialising in burnout. She is also an award-winning author of the Burnout Bible. Today we talked about how we can be looking out for symptoms of burnout, what burnout actually is, what we should be doing if we are experiencing those symptoms, if we are already in burnout, how we can use nutrition, supplementation, we touched upon, to help us when we are in that phase, and also what we can be doing day to day to help us to prevent us ever reaching that point. I hope you find this helpful. So hello, Rachel. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on to the podcast. So you are Rachel Philpotts. You are the founder of Renew Functional Medicine Clinic, specialist in burnout, and also an award-winning author. Author of the Burnout Bible, and it is looking at how to tackle fatigue and emotional overwhelm naturally. So you were number one on the list of guests that I wanted to get on. Aww. The listeners to this podcast are generally corporate women. Obviously, it's called the Wellness Brief. But I wanted to make sure it was sort of 360 approach to the wellness of corporate women. And obviously, burnout is something that is huge. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to put some questions to you, but also to just get some of your wisdom today on the subject. So tell us a bit about your background and how you came to be doing what you're doing.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Sarah. I couldn't have said it better myself. So yes, I'm Rachel. Thanks for having me, Sarah. My experience with burnout is kind of been there, got the t-shirt. So I used to work in a corporate role, mainly commercial and procurement roles. And it was I basically experienced burnout while I was working in those roles. So I've got first-hand experience of what that's like, and it's not fun.
And you were in your 30s, weren't you, when that happened?
I was in my mid-30s, and I think I'd just always been a bit of a high achiever, and I'd label myself a workaholic, work hard, play hard kind of person.
Super ambitious.
Yeah, so I also think that you get that when you're younger, you can sort of sustain that. And I told myself that I thrived on stress and that I needed to be almost under pressure to be able to perform at my best. What a limiting belief that turned out to be. So I was in my mid-30s working in corporate, and I experienced burnout. So I've been there, got the t-shirt. I said that already twice. Sorry, you can edit that out if you want.
It'll stay.
And it was coming out of my own burnout experience that led me to essentially leave my corporate career behind and retrain. And now burnout has become my whole mission, if you like, my reason for existence. So everything that I've done since then has had burnout at the core of it. So setting up the clinic was because I wanted to help women with burnout. I've kind of got this, like as I said, mission that I want to reduce female burnout globally and support women's mental health. All my decisions since then have been, how can this help achieve that mission? So the clinic set up with that at the heart. He wrote the book. The Burnout Bible, for anyone who hasn't already read it. So again, that was to, not everyone can access the clinic. So the book was there to be able to provide a low cost option for perhaps those that, for whom the clinic experience wasn't feasible. I do corporate workshops, corporate speaking, all about burnout prevention. I run wellbeing events, again, to help those that are working in high pressured environments to take the time for themselves and de-stress. And I've recently just piloted something called the Burnout Brunch, which is again focused on a little bit of networking, but without that kind of commercial goal. And again, blending some of that restorative work with the community aspect. So lots of things that have gone on with the burnout in that theme.
Do you know what though? It's amazing now. It's like, I was thinking about this before, and it's like, I wish I'd known you, because we've known each other, a few years now?
Yeah.
But I met you after I'd been through the whole process. So I personally as well experienced burnout. And it's awful. And I actually felt a lot of shame around it. So I didn't tell. I don't even think I even told my mum.
Yeah.
Like it was like there was a couple of close people, but I didn't know you at the time.
Yeah.
And it's lovely now to be able to signpost people to someone who I know will get it, but also has the tools to look after them.
Yeah. And I think you're right about talking about it, because it does come with a lot of shame. You feel like a failure when you've burnt out, because you feel like there's something that, you haven't been able to cope. And we were saying before we sat down that, burnout isn't about not being able to cope. It's about the fact that you've coped actually really well for far too long.
You've functioned at such a level that your body can't sustain it long term.
Absolutely.
I was going to actually ask you, how is that burnout actually defined? So what's the definition?
So there's, again, through my research and looking at what burnout is, there's been many attempts to define burnout. We kind of think about burnout as that end state following a period of chronic stress.
Yeah.
But nowadays, most people define burnout based on the research of two clinical psychologists.
Yeah, I think you refer to them in your book, don't you?
So Christina Maslach's model is a 3-dimensional model that people tend to mostly use to define burnout. And that is emotional exhaustion, occupational cynicism, and that basically just means that you're kind of finding your colleagues really annoying, and reduced personal achievement. So as well as feeling exhausted and irritated by those around you, you're also not functioning at your best. That's the 3-dimensional model most people use. But I actually really like, and I like to read, if that's okay.
Yeah, go on.
The definition by her peer, who's called Freudenberger, and he really highlights the physicality of burnout, which I think most people who think about burnout miss. And he says there is a feeling of exhaustion, being unable to shake a lingering cold, suffering from frequent headaches and gastrointestinal disturbances, sleeplessness and shortness of breath. So I think for me, that really does highlight and bring together these collection of symptoms that you wouldn't even necessarily associate with being burnout. But stress is a real physical event in the body, and I think it's important to recognise those symptoms as being, stress and also signs that burnout might be on the cards.
What are the early sort of signs then you would tend to, because I know with me personally, I was in the depth of it before I knew it was coming. Yeah. It just completely crept up on me.
Yeah. And it's so easy, I think, when you are functioning to ignore the warning signs. And I was guilty of that as well. You do ignore that. You just kind of think, oh, what's that? And then you carry on. So in terms of what the signs are, I think most of us would recognise the changes in cognitive function and ability and mood. So things like feeling anxious, foggy brain, perhaps sleep disturbances, things like that.
That was massive for me.
Yeah, so people will kind of know changes that stress can impact those things. But the signs that people don't necessarily pick up on are the signs we mentioned there. So, changes in immune function. So maybe you are, having frequent colds and coughs and infections, and then you just get rid of one and then another one comes back. Changes in bowel movements, so perhaps going a bit more often or perhaps not going at all. For women, it might be changes in menstrual cycles. So, perhaps, more symptomatic, or they just kind of disappear entirely. Yeah. Changes in weight. So there's many different symptoms. I know, obviously, with fatigue being one that we all recognise as well. And we're all good. We're all different. So we're going to experience burnout in a combination of all of those different things. And that's because the stress response basically recruits all these different bodily systems when it's executing itself.
Yeah.
And sometimes it will, upregulate certain things whilst downregulating other things. And that's why we'll see changes in symptoms.
Yeah, no, it's actually not something that's openly talked about either, is it? Which doesn't help with recognising symptoms. No. It's like so helpful, because even if someone listening to this is experiencing those things and isn't necessarily ready to talk to people about it, if they can at least recognise it in themselves.
Yeah.
I think definitely sort of like chronic stress for a long period of time, but thinking, well, I've always performed at this level and been fine. Yeah. So I think what happened with me, and I don't know whether you find that this happens, is once I actually stopped when I actually come to the end of like a really, really high pressured caseload, that was when it was the minute I stopped.
Yeah.
And do you see that as something that tends to happen? It's almost like the body starts to just relax and
kind of let that go. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think back to my own burnout as well. And I was coping with lots of different things at work at the time. We were going through this like high pressure like litigation, and I was the expert witness, and that's kind of alongside your day job.
That's pressure as well. That's
there was a lot going on, and you know, you've climbed the corporate ladder as well, so your responsibilities become larger. So that was definitely a contributing factor. But also, we were also renovating our house at the time.
God. Which is stressful on its own.
And you've got people in your house all the time, so you felt like almost like you can't like let go while there's individuals there. And I always look back. Didn't even think about this at the time, but look back and think, oh yeah, so my burnout came after the summer. Oh, that was the other thing. I used to cover everybody else's annual leave as well because like...
So you never got any downtime. You didn't get that rest and recuperation.
So it was kind of like August, September time. You know, the bills, everyone had kind of just gone out the house. Yeah. All these things had just kind of happened. And then, there was just this moment where I just couldn't function anymore. I didn't leave the house. Yeah. And you're right, it does come with shame because then you feel like you can't tell anyone, and it's weird because people are like then wondering like, well, why are you off work?
I know. But you know, I think as well, I mean, is it more prevalent in women? Is it more prevalent in sort of corporate women, would you say? Or is that just the sorts of people who present to you?
I would say a lot of the research has actually been done in like a medical clinical setting. So most of the research we see on burnout will be, you know, doctors, nurses, those kind of populations that are studied most. Yeah. And that was off the back as well. A lot of studies were done post-COVID because of the pressure that was involved in hospital environments then.
Yeah, so God, there must have been so much there, mustn't there?
Absolutely. So that's what we see the most. And then I think it's any occupation where there's high pressure environment. So clinically that I see, you know, corporate women, because that's who present in our clinic. There is also research that says that although burnout is not a uniquely female experience, women are more vulnerable to burnout than men. And they've looked at that across, like, you know, quite large cohort populations where they've compared. And that's generally, they believe, because of the other factors. So burnout is definitely an occupational exhaustion thing, but they believe that women may be coping with other things outside of the workplace. They tend to be the primary caregiver, whether that's their own children or parents, elderly relatives, and then juggling other things. So, and also there's like social factors too, like gender pay gap and all that stuff that kind of like is thrown into the mix.
Because you mentioned as well about sort of the enjoyment of the work that you do as well, being sort of, I think if you're not fulfilled as well, and all you perceive as the pressure that comes with it,
absolutely,
the resentment towards it as well, because it's taken way more than it's given you, isn't it, at that point?
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing. I always thought back and I think, God, I did a lot of travelling with work, which everyone used to think, oh, that must be stressful. And I actually quite enjoyed the travelling. It didn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed the work. I had a great team, but there were definitely frustrations from a career progression and other things that were going on, expectations wise, that compounded it and made it happen at that point in time. And that's the thing with burnout. There'll potentially be a genetic vulnerability. There might be all these other things going on in the body, but there's also got to be that like triggering thing,
like a tipping point.
Yeah.
So do you find that tends to be the case? There is something that's like the final straw, is it? Where you get to the point where this is it. Now I've got to listen to what's going on with my body. I can't just push through this anymore. This is beyond stress.
And I think that we think about, burnout isn't something that just happens overnight. And I certainly position it in the book as something that happens in 3 stages. And stage 1 is very much a coping stage. And we're designed as humans to be able to adapt and cope because, the human body is amazing. And then stage 2 is where you're really going to start to notice some of those signs and symptoms, because your body's ability you're basically losing resilience in that stage, and your body's ability to cope is changing.
Right.
And then you kind of hopefully you recognize it when you're in that stage, but otherwise the kind of final stage is that kind of, complete exhaustion stage where you're not even really able to raise the same stress response as you could have done previously.
Yeah.
So.
I know for me personally as well, it was an inconvenience. It was such a huge, I was like, this cannot happen to me. I need to be able to function.
Yeah.
And if thinking about it, I said to you that it felt like it came from nowhere. The warning signs were very much there. But I think and we were talking about this before, you can function for such a long time at such a high level that you think you can get away with doing that.
Yeah.
And I did perform really well. Like it wasn't impacting performance at all with me.
Yeah.
I functioned at a really high level, but I wasn't sleeping properly. I was exhausted. That was just getting more and more gradually worse.
Yeah, and what else is falling away around that? Because I think that like the other thing that I noticed for myself was that I withdrew because everything's. So there's two things you said there. One was it was an inconvenience, and two was that kind of like I was still performing at my best. And when I think about those two things, taking the latter first, I concentrated on functioning at work, so everything else fell away. So all kind of like my personal commitments, any kind of hobbies, any kind of pleasure, enjoyment of anything in my personal life just absolutely eroded, so that all I was doing was functioning at work. To the point when that's all that's left, and then you can't do that anymore.
That's so true, because it literally, you're already diminished mental capacity by this point. So it has to take everything. And do you know what? I had never thought of it like that, but when you think about it, you've only got so much to give, haven't you? Exactly. At the end of the day.
And then the luxury thing. So I have that conversation with so many women now. Like, and there's people who you can kind of, when you've got that perspective of hindsight because you've been through it, and you've got people talking to you, and I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with women who said to me, I haven't got the luxury of burning out. I haven't got I can't afford the time. And you think, well, once you've gone over the cliff, then, you can't turn back.
There's no way around it, is there? I think definitely because I work predominantly with corporate women as well, is I'm probably a little bit more live to sort of some of the early signs that you were talking about then. So one of the things that we look at every single week is energy levels and how they're sleeping. Yeah. And often if the sleep is disrupted, that's for me to go, so tell me a little bit about that. What's going on with this? Because that tends to be a very early sign, doesn't it? Yeah. And then for me, as I say, being able to signpost them if needed to someone like yourself. So in your clinic, what sort of things do you focus on? So what do you do if someone comes to see you who was suffering?
So we recognise, functional medicine is all about recognising the individuality of the person in front of you. So what brings me to burnout will be different to what brought you to burnout. We'll have a different combination of factors. So what we really want to understand from that individual is their kind of full health history, so we can understand if there's any genetic predisposition there, what kind of health triggers might have occurred during the course of their life. And then we also undertake quite comprehensive functional and potentially genetic testing so that we can understand their unique biochemistry. And all that information allows us to be really personalised with our advice, because I mentioned before the different stages. So this is like a really basic example, but I mentioned the different stages of burnout. When you're in stage 2, you're going to be producing an awful lot of cortisol. When you're in stage 3, you're probably underproducing cortisol. So the way that you would approach that is different, and you can't tell that just from what the person said in front of you. So it's understanding these biochemical markers that allow us to give personalised clinical advice to the people in front of us. Yeah.
And one of the questions actually we were asked was whether someone who has been diagnosed with ADHD might be more susceptible to burnout. Is that something you've noticed?
So I would say that coping with any health condition is going to be a stressor on the system. Yeah, so whatever that is, exactly, is potentially a stressor. When we look at the research, there are certain conditions that are linked to burnout, by which I mean it's been studied. So, for example, perimenopause, we know that there's a link there. Yeah. Being perimenopausal increases the risk of burnout. Burnout increases the risk of potentially early menopause. So there's definitely a link there.
So it's chicken and egg, isn't it?
With that one, yeah.
And trying to differentiate where the symptoms coming from.
Yes, which is another reason why we'll undertake quite a comprehensive hormone testing, so we can understand which things are kind of having an influence there. Yeah. With ADHD, the research isn't quite as advanced. By which I mean it's at a hypothetical stage. So there are scientific hypotheses out there that ADHD may increase the risk of burnout, but we haven't got enough evidence there to say definitively yes. But then when we think about ADHD, we think about things like executive function challenges. We think about perfectionism. We think about overexertion. So those three things immediately are fatiguing and tiring. So
and probably masking as well.
Exactly. So easy to see why there might be a link there. So we'll wait and see as the research emerges. But definitely there's that hypothesis is there based on what we know. There's also something that I've seen called actual ADHD burnout. So almost like a subset of burnout that is linked with ADHD because of that, because of the coping mechanisms that individuals with ADHD have to deploy to be able to manage their symptoms, and that can then contribute to a specific type of burnout.
Is that more sort of shorter term periods of burnout as opposed to?
So it's slightly different. It's an ADHD specific burnout, and it's like a cycle type thing,
right?
As opposed to
so they would
burn out more broadly,
come out, come out of it quicker.
Yeah. The other thing that we know as well with burnout. We know with both burnout and ADHD that the majority of individuals, so around 70%, will also co-present with another mental health issue. So there's definitely links there between, someone with ADHD might be more likely to experience anxiety, might be more likely to experience depression. And both of those conditions have significantly overlapping symptomology with burnout. So you can really see the links there.
Do you know that one of the other questions we had, and that leads really nicely to, was someone asked whether or not, this is Louise asked, whether or not burnout is often mistaken for something else.
Yeah.
And from what you were saying there, it sounds like it could
It's really common because burnout isn't a medically recognised condition. And
it's almost not standalone, is it?
Well, no, exactly. So what that means, so if you went onto the NHS website and typed in burnout, it wouldn't churn out any result. So if you go to the doctor with these symptoms, they've got no way of being able to diagnose burnout because it's not this medical condition, and equally no way of being able to treat it. So that means what commonly happens is you'll come away with either you're stressed out, just go and rest, or a diagnosis of a generalised anxiety or major depressive disorder.
That actually makes complete sense now, because obviously a doctor can only diagnose you with a medically recognised condition.
Yeah.
So it would be work-related stress or anxiety or something.
Yeah, and that was my own experience. So I kind of came away with them. They, thought I was like depressed, kind of gave me the medication, suggested talking therapy. And to be honest, at the time, I was at that stage 3 burnout where I was that exhausted, not functioning, that I kind of just thought, that must be what it is. Yeah. And it's only then when you kind of start to recover and you think, well, actually, I used to be more of an anxious person, and then getting to burnout and not caring anymore, that was kind of scary.
So that was one of the things I wanted to ask you, because again, we were saying about how individual it is, and I did get to that point of being I didn't actually know I was approaching burnout. I should have done. But I didn't. And then I went through a period of, it actually, as I say, occurred when I wasn't busy with work. And I was at this point able to take some time away from work. But I also almost got to a point of feeling not very much.
Yeah.
Going from being sort of feeling chronically stressed to slowly working on sleep. I think the things for me were, and we're going to go on to sort of the things that we can do.
Yeah.
But just that period of being like, whoa, I don't know whether I like this.
Yeah, no, it's weird because you don't feel like yourself anymore. I think that's the main thing when you know something's wrong. And well, I remember thinking, like, going to the doctors and I knew something was really wrong because I didn't feel like myself anymore. And I can remember the exact morning where I was supposed to be going down to traveling down south to a client meeting. And other members of the team were going, and I just got up that morning, didn't go. I don't think I left the house for like
confused to say no, I'm not going.
Yeah. And I knew I was letting people down, but I just didn't care. And normally that was just not like me, because
it's almost caring too much. I found that really, really hard to deal with. I gave too much. And I should have held more back, but I just don't think I knew how to do that. I sort of go all in with stuff. It's the way it is.
Yeah. And that's what makes us potentially more vulnerable, doesn't it?
It makes us more vulnerable, and it makes now that I've got moved away from corporate and into coaching, it's probably the biggest advantage now is that I do always try to sort of look for things that a person might be struggling beyond just fitness and, I might coach someone with aesthetic goals or fitness goals, but my concern is 360 wellness.
The whole person.
And there's no point, is there, looking your best if you feel absolutely wrote off. What sort of things can people be doing then to try and manage?
Yeah, so I think it probably would depend on what stage of burnout they presented themselves with. So I think if somebody has kind of completely, end stage exhaustion, then I would say that, we probably wouldn't suggest they do very much at that point.
Rest.
So, it's just, absolutely just rest, take time off if you can. Sleep. Sleep is the antidote to cortisol, so it lowers it. So it's like a great healer from that perspective. So I think the thing that I find really interesting with burnout is that people will kind of come in maybe at that stage 2 stage, and that kind of middle ground where they're really kind of stressed out, and they probably have noticed symptoms like they've put weight on, or they're not sleeping, or they're feeling a bit more anxious, and so they decide to then go and sign up for a triathlon or something because that's the answer, and like just basically pour
you've got nothing to give as
more stress on exactly, like revving this engine that's like really got no gas on it in it. So rest, absolutely. Taking that step back and reducing everything, so really taking a step backwards to be able to take a step forward. So scaling everything back. And then for the people who are then either kind of in that stage 2 preventative stage, or, have rested and feel like they're ready to take on more, that's when we would look to start making small changes then, looking at the diet, looking at the way that they're kind of engaging with the world, whether that's exercise or, community and mindset stuff as well. So a whole raft of, like you said.
And I suppose like if you catch it in that part, you can prevent, or the idea is that you
absolutely,
you prevent it from ever.
And I think we've got to be, individuals need to have some kind of motivation to make change. And I think when they're that depleted, it's going to be really hard. So again, this is where we might look at supporting them in the short term with a really kind of personalised supplement plan, so that we can make sure that we're plugging the gaps for nutrients that are easily depleted with stress. And then once they start to feel, once the clouds lift a little bit and they feel a bit more rested, then we can start to make some more of the, personalised dietary type changes.
I think you can underestimate, can't you, how much you can improve how you feel day to day through your nutrition.
Exactly.
And through, like it does, like you say, you don't have to be signing up to a High but going for a walk is one of like the most stress relieving forms of exercise in terms of bit of headspace, bit of fresh air. But we feel like in that stage 2, we don't have the time to do those things. And another thing is alcohol. For a lot of people, I imagine in that phase, that becomes the thing that helps them to cope, but is actually probably the most counterproductive thing that you can possibly do, because it literally disrupts everything, alcohol, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it depletes us of the nutrients that we need to kind of cope with stress and regulate our mood. And also, whilst the liver is processing alcohol, which it perceives to be more toxic than anything else, it's not going to be effectively processing your hormones or your stress, your reproductive
all the
hormones,
focus for that is on the body, removing the toxin from the body, isn't it?
It's easy to see why people do it. So alcohol works on a neurotransmitter in the brain called GABA, and GABA is our kind of calming neurotransmitter. So alcohol essentially keeps GABA in play for longer. So that's why
first sip of wine.
That's that kind of like, it's that feeling. But really, really, and people think I'm like mad when I suggest this, but there are also like herbs that do the same thing. So if it's summertime and you've got herbs in your garden and just sniffing and kind of rubbing herbs, I know. Actually smell like...
Which one? Go on, which ones?
So any kind of herbs that
I don't think I'd be able to know how to
feel nice. Or so things like peppermint tea contains this compound called rosmarinic acid, and rosmarinic acid also keeps GABA in play for longer.
Nice.
So that's also a nice one to kind of use.
So that might be a nice one for before bed, like for winding down.
Absolutely, for winding down. And chamomile has anti-stress properties for different reasons, but peppermint and other herbs contain this compound that keep GABA in play for longer in the same way alcohol does. So it is a bit of a stretch when I say please replace your 5
with
o'clock,
sniffing herbs,
your 6 o'clock wine with a herbal tea.
Start sniffing some chives.
Maybe not chives, but
maybe not chives.
I think anything. I think as well, if you're ever cooking a roast dinner and you kind of, let's say you've left it in, and you come back in the house and that smell that meets you, I think it is quite a relaxing smell. So people do know that, but it's just not something that you would kind of like join the dots with. Yoga as well has also been shown in the research to keep GABA in play for longer. So there are other diet and lifestyle things that we can do that will work on that calming neurotransmitter.
And you're a meditation teacher as well, aren't you? Is it sound healing?
Yeah.
You do sound baths?
Yeah, we do a few
Which
things.
I still haven't managed to get to one of yours yet.
No, it's a bit of a...
It's like you're in Spain
field.
because you're over the water, and it's like literally...
Come on,
it's like
Sarah.
I need my passport to go over to the Wirral.
And it's literally just out of the tunnel as well, so you've got no excuse. Yeah, so that was something. So I, enjoy going to things that are relaxing, and the sound bath thing was a bit of a left field one for me. It wasn't really something I planned to do. I just, during the summer, one of my things that I like to do is to take a bit of time off in August and then do something for myself. So this one particular year, I thought, I fancy doing something new, learning a new skill. So I took myself off on this sound bath course, and the whole time when the lady kept saying to me, and when you're hosting sound baths, and I kept saying, I'm not hosting sound baths.
I'm just doing my own in the living room.
Yeah, I was just saying, I'm just here for fun. And I kept saying it over and over again. No, just here for fun. And then I completed this course. And anyway, I was hosting a retreat day that September with a friend who's a yoga instructor. And I was doing like the workshops and things like that. And I said to her, I've done this sound bath course, should we do one at the end? So all of a sudden, all these instruments started arriving at the house. And my husband was like, what on earth are you doing?
What's happening here?
And I was like, just think of it like somebody who kind of has a day job that's very sciencey and clinical. I said, and I'm in a band at the weekend. That's how so the sound bath thing and it's a really nice one because it joins in so well because it is relaxing.
So relaxing. I love a sound bath.
Fits in with the whole burnout mission. And what's really interesting now is I've actually been working with a couple of corporate clients where I've combined the burnout workshop in terms of the theory and, talking to them about the method in my book. And then we'll have a separate relaxation exercise at the end and I'll get the bulbs out. So weirdly, it's like these skills have suddenly combined into a thing.
It's forcing someone as well to take some time, isn't it, as well? Because I think, what you hit the nail on the head when you said before that when you are functioning at that high level, you're exhausted, but you have to just keep going. Yeah. All your energy has to go there. And then any time outside of work, for me, certainly was spent spiralling. It certainly wasn't. Yeah. I didn't have the bandwidth to be bringing. I mean, if you'd have asked me to try and meditate, the bandwidth was not there.
Yeah.
But
it's, most people
I struggle with the best of times.
I was going to say, I'm
I
not
struggle
sure.
with it still.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm the best meditator either. I mean, with the sound bath, we tend to do what's called a Chinese tea ceremony at the beginning, where we'll drink tea because it's got the relaxing properties. And I'll guide a meditation that relates to the tea, and that allows people to kind of come in and feel grounded, not just kind of racing in with like they land on the mat and then saying to them, now just lie down and relax for like 45 minutes, and the brain's still going.
When they've probably been stuck in traffic on the way there, or the kids have had them up the wall when they've got, all of that. It's very hard.
Guided meditation like that, with also while you're sipping a tea, so it's kind of a bit like you're doing something quite practical, and then you can lie down. Because the other thing that I think with the sound was it originally felt like a bit woo to me, and I was a bit like, I don't really know why this is working. So again, while I was at this course, I just kept asking questions because I wanted to know what the science was. I had to have like an explanation.
That's the clinical background in you, isn't it?
But this is the thing, people think it's just like nice floaty music that you're just listening to.
No, but the research shows, doesn't it?
It's the vibrations. It's having, an effect. It's toning the vagus nerve, which is the kind of biggest nerve between the brain and the gut that helps manage our parasympathetic nervous system. So there is there.
Do you see as well that burnout affects the gut quite a bit as well?
Yeah, so we do. Generally, I would say nearly all the women that come into our clinic will do a comprehensive stool test that we can understand digestive function.
Just remind me, what's the scale that you use to measure someone's stool? Does the stool chart?
The Bristol stool chart.
Yeah, the Bristol stool chart, that's it.
So we'll ask that question anyway in the health questionnaire so we can understand what that is. And I'll probably, when we speak to somebody to kind of judge if we were the right people for them, we'll ask that question anyway. So I'll already know what their kind of bowel movements are doing. And then we'll generally suggest a comprehensive stool test so that we can understand digestive function, immune health in the gut, inflammation in the gut, the microbiome, because it is disrupted so much by stress. And there's that kind of bi-directional relationship between, stress from the brain affecting the gut, but also changes in the gut affecting brain and mood. So We want to understand that.
It's so true as well, isn't it? That when, I know certainly for me, if I had moments of anxiety, you feel it in your stomach, don't you? Feel physically sick. Yeah. There's a reason that you feel it in your gut, isn't there?
Well, people recognise that as well. I think there's many people who, if you said to them, you had to think of a time when you had to maybe you had an exam or you were kind of, going through something particularly stressful, and it can affect your bowels.
Yeah.
And this is probably too much information, but I went through something really stressful.
We're not gatekeeping anything here.
I went through something stressful in the summer with my husband, and in that 24 hours...
must have gone the toilet about 15 times.
Unbelievable, yeah.
Yeah, it is, but it does. It's straight away. It's like that urge, isn't it? Oh my God, I need the toilet.
Yeah.
And it's panic and anxiety and everything. And I think as well, definitely what I see is when someone is functioning at that high level, they're exhausted. I think you use the phrase tired and wired, don't you?
Yeah.
And often, a lot of the time as well, the nutrition isn't great, but they're relying a lot on sort of your ultra processed, ready meals and stuff off the shelf, just anything they can grab, basically. Yeah. So the nutrition, they're probably, nutrient deficient in many aspects, but there's nothing there that supports the gut. There's probably a complete lack of fibre, and the importance of fibre for the gut and the impact that then has on how we feel is massive, isn't it?
Yeah. And I kind of say to individuals who are in that situation that it's not their fault. Like, no, cortisol is, a survival hormone. Yeah. So it's cortisol that's getting you to reach for the nearest thing because it thinks that you're in a room with a tiger. So it's like, you need to
on guard,
you need to fuel this like stress response. So you need to grab. So nothing's going to get you reaching for the biscuits quicker than cortisol is.
No.
And so you're relying on this short-term fix for energy. At the same time, stress is already depleting you of nutrients, and you're then probably not replenishing them because, like you said, you're not reaching for the fruit and veg because that's not what cortisol's driving.
And
you
it's
towards.
Not, yeah. And that's one of the first things that I always look at. And I'm not sort of one of those coaches who's like, we need to strip all of this out of your diet. It's very much what's missing and what can we add in. Yeah. So we need to get some more fruit and vegetables in. A couple of portions with each meal. We need to make sure we've got some fibre, some protein, all of that stuff, some healthy fats, nice and balanced, but it's doing it. It's softly. If someone is in that sort of survival mode, that would you sort of say that's like your stage 2 is survival, isn't it? Really, at that point,
I think so. Yeah, and I think that's where if they're able to kind of take on board some of those changes, and I think that's great.
It's hard, isn't it? At that point, it's like it's almost your low hanging fruit you're going for, isn't it? That doesn't overwhelm further.
No, exactly, and it's finding ways that they can even like using convenience to their advantage. So when somebody again is like really, really stressed, we might be using things like smoothies, for example, just to kind of get something in, or getting them to kind of utilize like meal delivery services, like anything, or meal kits, all these things that like our convenient world has created for us that can be used in a helpful way. And then once they're then feeling better, because I think that's the thing, people come to see a health coach or a clinical nutritionist, and they think that's then we're going to just immediately make them, turn them into a master chef overnight.
Oh God, no.
Like,
Jesus, no.
I don't live like that. No, so I'm definitely not going to expect you to live like that.
No. If you're already overwhelmed, you don't need a million other things to be thinking about. It really is stripping it back a lot of the time, isn't it? Yeah. But looking at what's missing, rather than
adding in, rather than taking.
And then what you find as well, and I always say this to the girls, don't want them to overanalyze anything. Really, the overthinking is, the bandwidth's limited, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the more and more you add bits and bobs in that are going to support your health, the naturally everything else reduces anyway, without you thinking I can't eat that anymore. So that's another thing, isn't it, with things being labelled good and bad. And if you're already in that fight or flight mode, and then you start thinking, well, I saw on the internet that I'm failing at this as well. And, my diet, I'm failing at that. I'm not doing a high rock. So I'm clearly not, it's just like there's so much pressure for us to be nailing everything, and just the basics of eating well as best you can, like just be mindful. I always say mindful food choices, thinking about what's going to make you feel good, moving daily. And that doesn't mean, like I say, running. If a high rocks might make one person feel amazing, and it might tip someone over the edge, mightn't it? Tip me over the edge probably. and focusing on sleeping and, like you were saying, like things that can help manage stress as well. Sleep's massive, isn't it? Because if you're not sleeping, you're less likely to eat well. You're less likely to move more. You're less likely to be able to manage symptoms of stress, aren't you? So for me, sleep is always one of the first places I go. And I think it surprises a lot of the clients I work with because they're like, I wasn't expecting us to be going to sleep. And I'm like, no, I need to know how you sleep. And I'll ask them every single week.
And I say the same as well. We're probably approaching it slightly differently because we might be using again, therapeutic supplements to potentially help with that as well. But again, we're looking for quick wins when somebody's overwhelmed so that we can kind of help them. But sleep is just the underestimated health tonic, I think.
When you were saying about therapeutic supplements, then are you talking like magnesium type?
So it depends on the individual. So this is all where we get like really personalised.
Yeah.
So there's there are certain things that can be helpful generally. So we know, for example, that the stress response depletes us of vitamin C, depletes us of B vitamins, depletes us of magnesium. So in those cases,
you would be looking to
supplements might be helpful, but again, there's different types of each one. So,
I know.
So it's about choosing the right one for the right person in the context of their whole symptoms. So, for something like magnesium, then we might be suggesting something as simple as like an Epsom salt bath, so that they can actually absorb magnesium through the skin rather than necessarily relying on a supplement.
I suppose it's different stages as well, isn't it, of how, of severity of how the sleep is disrupted.
Yeah, and it depends what's going on. So again, if some clients come, we see some clients with some really complicated health issues. So we're really careful with how we implement supplements.
Yeah, me too.
And we're checking, we're checking for contraindications with medication, and we're clinically trained to be able to dose and specify what supplements that individual should have. So,
one of the things that I was actually asked to do by my clients was a podcast on supplements, and I actually said I'm not going to do that because it's too personalised. My clients have a general supplement guide, which is sort of qualified with, you all work one-to-one with me. Yeah. So these are the sorts of things that we might want to have a chat about. Yeah. But if someone's got a specific medical condition or if they are taking any medication, they need to check, don't they, that there's going to be no adverse interaction. Yeah. But also, I don't know whether I've spoken to people before where they've listed all the supplements they're taking. And then I've said, what do you take that one for? And they don't know. And I was thinking, you could save yourself an absolute small fortune, but I'm going to assume you work in the same way. I take a food first approach. And I suppose with you're at a point where someone might not be able to fully commit to the food first approach?
I think it will depend on the individual. So I think if somebody is really burnt out, then a clinical supplement plan is probably something that will form part of their
and get that into them quickly and easily.
And when I'm saying therapeutic supplement plan, by the way, these aren't supplements that are available in the supermarket or in.
You're not going to Home Bargain for these, are you?
These are like clinical grade supplements that you will need to access through. Like we use
specifically for the conditions that you're treating as well.
Exactly. So we're using them in that way, and they are generally a lot. Most of the supplement industry is this like $1 billion industry. Most of that industry is, isn't worth the money that you're paying.
It's unregulated as well.
It's unregulated, and a lot of the ingredients in there are just, are filler ingredients, or the form of the nutrient isn't the most bioavailable. So people are just wasting their money.
I know.
So when we're saying we're using therapeutic supplements, we're selecting things that are, evidence-based, and we know that the dose that we think that might be appropriate for that individual, because we've looked at that individual and thought, right, we know there's a clinical trial there of individuals who are like you, where there's been a benefit, where they've taken this amount for this amount of time at this time of day. This might work for you, so that's why we've got this rationale for doing this in your case.
So you're not just sending them off to Holland and Barrett with a shopping list. And this is what I don't. I won't be drawn into that sort of thing. There's very few supplements that the general population need. Yeah. And then beyond that goes to, like you say, that personal.
Personalisation.
And what that specific person may need. But it's something I I've shied away from it. I don't want to put information out.
That's good to be cautious, I think. And I think people ask me about supplements all the time because they know that it's part of my job. I get asked about
supplements so much.
But I think it's important to be cautious, and I actually think that you're better off listening to the people that are being cautious, because the ones who are kind of out there ready to kind of tell you what you should and shouldn't have,
Yeah. I mean, what I'll often do is, obviously I work one-to-one with all of the ladies I'm working with. So if they want to speak to me about supplements, what I will say is, well, if they're not someone who is already keeping a log of their nutrition, do that for the next couple of weeks for me, because you could be getting everything you need from your diet already. Yeah. There might be, but then there could be that we can plug the gaps nutritionally. And sometimes, say you're a vegan or something like that, there might be certain things that you're not going to be able to get from your food that you need to supplement. Yeah. But it's not it's not a one size fits all, is there?
No.
And social media doesn't help, because there's
so many influencers out there, aren't there, telling you what you shouldn't be taking. And
it's not even supplements, it's the nutritional advice that you see as well, and the amount of conversation. You must have very similar conversations to me, and it's like, is there any truth in this? And it's like, oh, for God's sake, who is it now? It's hard though for people, because you don't know. One of my clients actually said to me, how do you know where you're getting your information is correct? And when you're like, oh, hang on, well, I'm always on PubMed and stuff. So,
yeah, exactly.
But it's like, you've just got to trace back. I always say, trace back, where does the information come from? Because a lot of these influencers who are obviously getting paid to flog a supplement, they're financially invested, aren't they?
Yeah.
But you can often, you do find that there's usually a grain of truth in what's being said, isn't there? But the context around it, or, it's maybe one teeny tiny bit of a study that overall is not applicable to that category of person.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think if the content that you've seen is referenced, then that's a good start, because most of the content you see isn't referenced. And I think that you want to be able to rely on something that we are conveying information, like you said, from primary evidence, which is, clinical trials on PubMed. And whenever I make it, this whole book, there's a whole section at the back, because it all does references.
Yeah, you do have all the references.
Because you're not making sweeping statements from something. And also, again, when we're talking to clients, we're qualifying what level of evidence there is. So you asked me about ADHD and burnout, and I was like, well, this is where we're at with the evidence. We don't know, but there's a theory.
Yeah.
The same thing with like using any kind of advice in clinic. We might be saying there's this that we can try, but there's only been some small studies. We think it's going to have a positive effect. So we're almost like having the conversation around that because of the level of evidence.
Yeah.
Or there might be something that's like got like tons of evidence that we've got high confidence in. I
mean, and the other thing is, I always say, is have a little pick about it, what the person might stand to gain from what they're saying.
Exactly.
Because if you think about it, like, I'm never going to go viral on social media because I just promote balance. There's nothing viral about it. There's nothing sexy about it. I could, if I made some huge outlandish claims, then I'd probably get a lot more traction, because people like that, don't they? But usually if there's someone who is fear-mongering, drives me mental, because I think there's enough fear around, what we should and shouldn't be consuming or doing and all of this stuff. But often there's someone trying to sell you the solution to a problem that you don't actually have, and that you end up thinking you have.
Well, I think that's the end. And at the end of the day, there's no magic bullet for anything. No. So I think that's you
can't undo
overriding.
Yeah. But you can eat, like you were saying, like the way that you approach things is to ease what is going on, and then as that person gets more and more capacity and clarity, and that you can start to gradually then introduce more and more, small change. I always think as well, people overestimate the level of change that probably needs to take place. Like, often really small tweaks to things. It's like, I had one girl come to start working with me. She's amazing. She's a high performing lawyer, but came to me and was sleeping like 3 or 4 hours a night. And we focused on her sleep first and foremost. And she was like, I don't know what you've done, but I'm sleeping like the dead. That's what she put on one of her check-ins. I was laughing my head off. I'm sleeping like the dead. And you know what we did? We had a regular bedtime. She goes to bed at the same time. Yeah. We have we brought in like a wind down routine, and she gets up at a similar time.
Yeah.
it's amazing what your body likes regulation, doesn't it? So if it's we're going to bed, we're not going to bed that time tonight. You're like, a regular bedtime can make the world a difference, can't it?
Absolutely. Like you said, it is tough, isn't it? We're so bombarded with all this information.
I know.
And I think it is hard to navigate and who to trust. And I think, like you said, checking references. And is this person qualified to be given this advice? Is this person regulated?
And what do they stand to gain from you?
Yeah. Are they insured?
Do you know what's hard as well, though? There are some very, very big podcasts who have some wild guests on. Yeah. And sometimes they have, so the problem we have is that sometimes these podcasts will have brilliant guests on, but then the next week they'll have someone absolutely wild on who says the complete opposite to the guest previous week and is never challenged on it. And people are like, whoa, even with us being qualified in what we do and spending a lot of time like following the research and what's going on, sometimes I'm like, where's she got that? Have I missed that? Do you know? Yeah. I mean, there was an expert on burnout, wasn't there, on the Diary of a CEO the other week? I haven't listened to it because it's about 2 hours long. And to be quite honest, I thought, do you know what? I'm sitting down with Rachel.
The wrong person. I don't know.
I'd rather hear it from Rachel.
But I've not listened to that episode, so I can't comment.
So in terms of you and what are your, like, I'm going to ask this to any guests that come on the show. So what are your top 3 non-negotiables for like health and wellness, feeling good?
Yeah, we've already discussed one at length. So number 1 is sleep. Absolutely. Yeah. Number 2 is staying hydrated, and just don't underestimate how much hydration can influence how you feel. And number 3 is always eat breakfast. So yeah.
Do you find that one really helps you setting yourself up for?
Yeah, I think so. And I think many people who are burnt out have the tendency to kind of skip breakfast, and then they get that's when it starts messing with your hormones. So I think those 3 things. And I think for me as well, if one of those 3 things is out of whack, then that's the kind of thing I'll be like, I need to.
But if you think about it, sleep and the eating of breakfast are both very, very good for just regulating, timings and rhythm, circadian rhythm and all of that stuff. Yeah. But I think as well with the breakfast thing, a lot of people can I don't like eating breakfast. It's like, it's your first meal of the day. So if you don't want to have your breakfast till 10 o'clock, that's fine. And it doesn't matter what you eat, really. It doesn't have to be breakfast food, if you know what I mean. Yeah. It's like finding an eating pattern that works for the individual, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because again, something I get asked a lot about is fasting. And I'm sure and this is another thing, isn't it, when it comes to things like burnout. If your body is already under a chronic amount of stress, then perhaps introducing fasting is not going to be. I'm saying perhaps because I don't know what your stance is on this, but.
No, you're absolutely right. I talk about it in the book as well. I talk about lots of kind of like patterns that have become trendy and fasting has become. Now, I kind of talk about it in a balanced way, because there are pros and cons, and there's some really good research out there about fasting, and if you're already feeling great, then fasting can have some amazing benefits, and it's the only thing that's actually been proven to extend your life. So no wonder people are wanting to fast. But what's really interesting at the moment is the research is starting to kind of switch a little bit in terms of the eating window that's kind of been promoted from a kind of time restricted in eating as focused primarily on skipping breakfast and having an eat later eating window. But now when they've looked at studies of how the body's responding to different things, actually
it's earlier, isn't it?
Eating window is probably better. So you could still almost like achieve a decent overnight fast if you wanted to. But again, this is all caveated with, this is something that we would probably introduce with clients right at the end when they're starting to feel well.
And it's ultra personal again, isn't it?
Not at the beginning. So
I always say to, like, when I have a new client start with me, I always sort of, what is your sort of like eating schedule, whatever you want to call it. And what works well for one person might not work well for another, mightn't it? So I'm never dead against anything. I'm always like, if this works for you, but it's more when I don't have anyone who fasts for long periods. I don't think I could function like that. But But time restricted eating can work for some people.
Yeah.
So, but that really is just having a cutoff as to when you stop eating. And that's more because it aids sort of your digestion. And if you're struggling with sleep already, you don't want a big meal before you go into bed.
No, but as you said before, when you said about like the stressors on the system, that like actually if somebody's, really truly burnt out, then we probably want them eating little and often to start off with anyway, so that to kind of get everything back into rhythm, and then we might extend that period of time and then again personalize to that individual. But yeah, if you're burnt out, then fasting should be the bottom of the list for now.
For trying out, yeah. Oh, well, I love that. That was so helpful.
Thank you,
do you have any events coming up or anything at the moment? What's happening with your burnout brunches? You're going to be rolling that out soon, aren't you?
So that's going to be new into 2026. So we did the pilot, and I'm still kind of like reflecting on the feedback from that. So,
oh yes, I bumped into you. I was with my mum.
You did bump into me. Yeah, I'd just done it, and it went really well. Actually, I was really pleased with that day. But yeah, we're kind of coming to the end of the year now, aren't we? So I think it's more of a reflection stage, and then I'll decide in the new year what it's gonna look like. But yeah, excited.
Sounds good. And if anyone hasn't already got your book as well, they really do. Oh. I actually went to the book launch at Waterstones, didn't I? When you did that, that was when I very first met you.
Yeah, we'd not long met each other, and I remember it was a really awful day, and I was like so grateful that you'd come out, because I think the weather had put a lot of people off, hadn't it? But yeah, that was a nice book.
Well, do you know what as well? When I met you first, we were at a Leading Ladies in Business event, weren't we? And we just had synergy straight away.
Yeah.
And I think definitely in this industry, in like health, wellness, there's a mixed bag, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And we went for a coffee, didn't we? And we was like, because you never know what someone's view is going to be, do you? It's a bit of the Wild West out there.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, we're on the same page. So
yeah, I know. It went really well, didn't it?
Yeah. So it's been lovely to have you on. Really, really grateful to you for coming on. I think it'll be really helpful to so many people. How can people get in touch with you if they would like to have a chat to you about it?
So we're on social media platforms. So, I'm on social media myself. So at Rachel Philpotts, or, the clinic is at renew_clinic_, or you can just email me, rachel@renewclinic.co.uk.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I've loved having you on.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.